Hey everyone, Jamie here, founder and CEO of Flame Bears, a multi-platform media movement. We believe that stories ignite passion and engagement, and therefore we fuel those stories. We heard you loud and clear. You want more stories of the best women athletes in the world. So today, we are starting Flame Bears Unedited, which is, you guessed it, a largely unedited series of conversations. Now, just to name one thing, historically, our media productions have been highly edited with music, animations, etc. In the hopes of getting you more conversations, this unedited series is going to be largely unedited. Let's jump in. Skyler, thank you so much for joining us. Just to begin, can you introduce yourself and share how you found your current sport? I know it wasn't your original sport.
Yeah, my name is Skyler Espinoza. I'm originally from Freeport, Maine. So I grew up in running. I have a big running family. My aunt is Joan Benoit Samuelson, a big-time marathoner. So influenced by some special people. And I went to college at Columbia University in New York, which is where I found rowing. And then I rowed also at Stanford University in California. Unfortunately, I had to get back surgery at the end of my rowing career, which is kind of how I found cycling during PT. And just loved the sport and how accessible it is and how many people in community love to ride bikes. I'm still very competitive, so I kind of worked my way up through cycling. And now my main gig is working as a pilot for a tandem bike with US Paracycling.
So incredible, and so many different strands there that I definitely want to follow up with. The first thing you mentioned was role modelship and Joan Benoit Samuelson. So growing up at an early age, it sounded like you had some incredible role models. Who were the strong women in your life that you looked up to?
Absolutely her. And also my mom was a runner, did cross country and track in college. I think just so lucky that athletics was something that was really valued in my family and especially by the women in my life. My dad's sister was also the head track coach at Duke for a long time. So just athletics being something that was really valued and really important in my family was so huge growing up. And I think I wanted to be an athlete for as long as I can remember, just because it was such a cool thing. I remember being the world champion of rollerblading in my driveway when I was really little. So things like that. I think just having those women in my life modeling a career in athletics was really important to open that door for me.
That is incredible. So connect the dots for us. I know you had an incredible career in rowing as well. Now you're on Team USA as a paracyclist, tandem pilot. How did you get from young Skyler to where you are today?
I do think that I've always been taught to have lots of different identities and be flexible. I think that I never was attached to it has to be soccer or it has to be swimming or something like that. I think I was taught most to just follow what was exciting to me. And I've been really supported in that way, which I've been really lucky. And I do think that being flexible and taking opportunities as they come has been something that's really allowed me to have these opportunities and take opportunities and not say no to things that come, but be flexible and trust myself to go towards opportunities that feel exciting.
Talk to us a little bit more about flexibility. So that's something that a lot of athletes have brought up. What does that mean to you? And what advice would you give to people who are struggling with that? Because that's definitely something that a lot of athletes really struggle with.
I think that the biggest sticking point for me was the back surgery towards the end of my rowing career. I think that when I came to Stanford, I had a really strong idea of I want to row and then I want to row at the next level afterwards. And building that network up at Stanford was an important step on that journey. And then I had to take a pretty severe change in a different direction. And that's when I first started working with a sports psychologist, which I found really helpful, and exercises in identity and trying to separate out my identity as a person from my identity as an athlete. And I think that just helped recognize that my athlete identity can be flexible in a way that personal identity doesn't have to be. I can still be the same person, but then my athlete identity, which is separate from me, can change and still be something that's meaningful.
I absolutely love that. And I think that's such incredible advice that so many athletes at various levels, even young girls who are struggling with that, who are just getting into sport, there's that pleasing a part of who you are. And I think that's such a valuable lesson. So thank you very much for sharing that. Skyler, so how did you get into biking in particular? You mentioned it briefly in the very beginning, because I know that's what you're focusing on today.
So I knew that I wanted to do sport at a higher level, even though rowing, the door was closed at that point. I think it was a combination of things. One, I know that cycling is a sport that you don't need to have done since you're a kid, right? Like if I said I wanted to do soccer or lacrosse, it would have been a little harder at that point. And then also the rowing to cycling pipeline is pretty strong. Like I know a lot of rowers who have become cyclists because you already have like the ability to work hard, the endurance, the engine, that kind of thing. And then I also met my boyfriend, who's now my husband at the time, and he is a cyclist and triathlete. And so I think just like being involved with other cyclists at the time, like I said, that community piece kind of like made it something that was very fun. So I think that it kind of was a combination of wanting to do something at a next level and then also finding people at the time who were excited to ride bikes with me.
So cool. I absolutely love that. And I know you are now a tandem pilot with US Paracycling. So what was that transition like for you? I know you mentioned you do not have a physical disability. Why did you gravitate towards that space in particular?
The whole side of parasport is something that still needs to be elevated a lot. Athletes with all sorts of disabilities compete in sport all over the world in lots of different ways. Paracycling refers to athletes with disabilities who are involved in cycling. In the US, that happens both on the road and then on the velodrome or the track, which is what I do. And then I am a tandem pilot, which means I ride on the front of a tandem for athletes with visual disabilities. And in that class, blindness is a spectrum, but anyone who is qualifying in that is in the tandem. That's kind of how that part works. And then, yes, I don't have a disability. I'm an able-bodied athlete, and that has also been an interesting position to be in because all of my other teammates are people who are living and training and racing with disabilities.
Talk to us about that because it's there's such silos. We have athletes with physical disabilities who rarely interact with athletes without physical disabilities. What has that experience been like for you, and what has been most eye-opening?
Yeah, I definitely think just like the personal relationship with my partner on the tandem has been the most interesting and eye-opening part of that, because I think there is a potential for that relationship to feel unbalanced, that like either the athlete with a visual impairment says, this is my project and you're just a tool for me to succeed, or the pilot says, I'm the sighted athlete, I might have more experience bike racing, this is my project, you're just here to get me to the next level. So having that partnership feel very equal and that you need both people on board has been something that I'm really proud that my tandem partner and I have worked really hard at to make it feel like the project belongs to both of us. And I do think sometimes you're like, do I belong here, right? Do I belong in this sport? But like recognizing that it's really a team effort between you and the athlete with a visual impairment, I think is something that's so unique in parasport, and also unique to cycling is that as a guide, you're actually physically contributing to the speed of the bike, right? Like with running or something else, the guide can't actually contribute to the speed of the athlete. So that's been something that's cool too, that's unique to cycling.
Give us some more details on your partner. I know that you have been absolutely killing it. You're a 2-time Pan American champ. You're a world champ medalist. Who is your incredible partner in crime, and what should our audience know about her?
Her name is Hannah Chadwick. She's originally from the Bay Area, or she's originally from China, but she grew up in the Bay Area, and now she lives in Colorado Springs with the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. She has not been involved with sport that long. She only started to do sports in 2019 when she was kind of ID'd for this camp. And so that is something that I'm just so amazed by her, that she has not only learned how to ride the bike, but learned all of the habits that go along with being an elite athlete in terms of nutrition, in terms of sleep, in terms of just like those daily habits. And she's like super motivated to learn. And yeah, she's a super hardworking and also really thoughtful about all of the on the bike and off the bike stuff. So yeah, she's amazing. And I feel really lucky. I always tell her that I'm like, I don't know if I could do this with anybody else again. Like people always ask me like, would you tandem? And I think that like my relationship with Hannah is so special that it's hard to envision another project.
As someone who has never participated in a tandem sport, it sounds like you have an incredibly special relationship with Hannah. What are some of the notions that you would want to debunk or make sure that people do not take away from this conversation? This is really unique that we have the ability to talk to you today. So for those who are not familiar with para tandem sports, what do you want to make sure that you dispel?
Yeah, I think that about parasport in general, that people think it's like an easy way to get to the games or like that it's easy. People have to qualify the spots just the same as on the able-bodied side. It's super competitive, and all of these athletes are dealing with things that make training and racing more difficult. So it's definitely not easy. So that's the thing like I would want to dispel. And then also I think about the guide relationship. I think that people sometimes think like, oh, this is Skyler taking an easy way to get to the games or an easy way to get to world championships. And it is also not easy. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's not just the bike riding part, right? It's about that relationship, and it's about, lots of different responsibilities that you have as a guide. So I would say that it's very different, but it's not easier for sure than able-bodied sport.
I love that. You mentioned the responsibilities that you have as a guide. What are those?
Priority number one is always keeping Hannah safe, right? Like when we ride out on the road, when we ride on the track, anything, like my responsibility is to be her eyes and keep her safe. I think also my secondary responsibility is making sure that she feels empowered in her journey, right? That she is being listened to, that she's being heard, not only by me, but by the staff and other people that are, so I am an advocate for her. And she for me. Like I think that that's a responsibility that we share. And then I think also when we travel, usually her guide dog doesn't travel with us. So I'm her guide around meal times, walking around, those other kinds of things. And then also as an able-bodied person, I usually take more responsibility to making sure that our gear is okay and our bike is ready and like all of our equipment and stuff. Usually mechanics are there to also assist people who might be missing limbs or need more help with equipment. So I also take on like a little bit of like a team support role sometimes at competitions. So those are some of the responsibilities.
Skyler, you're such a leader in so many different ways of the word. I would love to hear from your perspective what leadership means. It sounds like you and Hannah have very much a reciprocal relationship where you are both leaders in different ways. But I would say within women's sports in general, you are a leader. What does leadership mean to you?
Thank you. That's very sweet of you to say. Definitely, I think modeling the behavior that you want people who are looking up to you to take on is a huge thing for me. I think that practicing what I preach is a big deal. I also try to use my platforms to speak out on issues that are important to me within women's sports. I do think that that is a hard thing sometimes for people who are worried about sponsorships and who are worried about teens. But I don't think that I'm quite famous enough for it really to affect me that much. So
Not yet.
But yeah, I think that leadership means speaking out about things that are important to your community and advocating for people who might not be able to advocate for themselves for whatever reason.
So for those who don't know, Skyler is an incredible writer. Talk to us about the things that you think most people get wrong about women in sports, and specifically what you're most passionate about in that arena.
I write a blog and I have, obviously social media presence. I've been writing my blog since like 2017, and I put out a really long article in 2017 about equal pay in women's sports. And that was a long time before this year, right? When a lot of people are having their eyes open to the salary discrepancies between men's and women's sports. So I just think like investment in women's sports is where it begins and ends. Like if we're not putting money towards it, it's just not possible for most people. And I hate that women's sports is still a area that's really mostly available to people who can afford it. So that is a really strong issue. An issue that I feel very strongly about. And then, on my blog, I also really try to talk to people and elevate stories that I am excited about and I think people should know about. Including trans women in sports is a really important issue to me. I have, trans friends and a lot of just like personal connections to that story. I'd say those are some big ones.
At Flamebearers, we're obviously a bit biased that we believe stories really matter. But why for you are stories the way that you like to communicate?
I was a literature major in college and then a writing tutor for a long time. And I love talking to people and then being able to distill what they're passionate about into like a clear and concise message. So I think that's a skill that I have. And that's why I love talking to people who might not be able to do that for themselves. So I love telling stories, and then I love getting to have those conversations that I have that then I get to turn into little nuggets. That's like my favorite thing in the whole world.
Well, we'll definitely make sure to link to your blog so everyone can definitely go check it out. I am a big fan of it. And I think Skyler is an incredible writer. I know you just got back from a big trip. What are your hopes professionally in the coming months and years?
I got back from World Championships in Rio with Hannah, and we are hoping to be selected for the 2024 Paralympic roster. It's a long shot for everyone, and there are very limited spots that get shared across the road and the track squad for women. So not that many people go, and we're hoping to be one of them. And then I think after that, it's going to change for me a little bit. I've told Hannah that this cycle is probably going to be my last, at this level. I think it just takes a really big toll. And obviously parts of your life don't get the kind of love and attention that they deserve. But I don't think that I'll ever say that I'm retiring from sport. I think that I want to be in sports forever. Like what capacity, I'm not really sure, but I want to keep empowering women in sports and elevating women in sports. And I think I'll always be an active person, and I'll definitely always be a competitive person. So it'll change, but I'm really excited for that chapter.
Skyler, you mentioned something that a lot of athletes mention in passing is that some areas of your life may not get as much love or attention. What are the areas of your life that you were excited to dig into a little more, to put a little more love and attention toward as you move into this next phase?
Yeah, I think in terms of sports, I love the storytelling bit. We've talked about that a lot, but I'm excited to have more time for that and be able to elevate more stories and do more of that. I also think my relationships with my friends, with my husband, with my family, it's really hard to have emotional and social energy when you're traveling all the time and really tired. It's hard to make plans. I'm also excited to travel for pleasure. I never want to travel these days because I'm always on the road. And so I always just want to be at home. But sometimes I joke, I feel like I haven't had a vacation, in 10 years, right? Where I'm not worried about working out or worried about my loss of fitness. So those are things that I'm excited about. I have a lot of hobbies. I love baking. I love reading. And just kind of having more of a rhythm that's like a day-to-day life are things I'm excited about.
Incredible. We always like to end with an ask of our community. Is there one thing that you would like people to do after hearing your story? And it could be something simple, or it could be a recommendation for a book or an action.
The action I would love people to take is to watch the Paralympics this year. I think that you would be really surprised at just the complete diversity of sport that's there and the amazing things that people are able to do. I think just something we talked about earlier in that identity piece. I think that athletes of all ages, especially younger athletes, I read something recently about having choice, delight, and joy in the things that you're doing as hobbies. So I want to make sure that people are choosing, that there's delight, so there's kind of like curiosity, there's things, and then there's also joy, so that there's happiness there. And if those three things are not being met, then I would hope that athletes of all ages, but again, especially younger athletes, are thinking about their relationship to sport and kind of taking a pause before kind of continuing down that path.
Choice, delight, and joy. I am going to prioritize those moving forward. That is fantastic. Skyler, this is your story. Anything that you want to talk about that you feel like we have not yet discussed?
I think something that I've been thinking about recently, that I've talked to a lot of friends, is sort of like the intellectual or mental part of sport that doesn't get talked about a lot. That I think that like a lot of people who are in sports are undervalued. Like they're not smart, or they're not like thoughtful, or they're not like, they don't have good things to share. And I think that, yeah, if you have like a book rec that you want to deal with athlete, or other things that, you know, are part of like an intellectual or emotional sphere in athletes, that athletes are also smart people and thoughtful people. So I hope that people know that too.
Brief. I love it. Completely agree. I think one of the things that we try to debunk is that there are these stereotypes and these silos that athletes are individuals and intellectuals and humans just like everyone else, with wants, needs, desires, skill sets that lie in many different domains. And the stereotype of the stupid jock is not only just completely false, but it is hurting thousands and millions of people. So I think that is an incredible point.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you do to elevate stories and all the work that you do on Flame Bears.
If you like what you're hearing, please leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us along on social media for more behind-the-scenes exclusive content on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever social platform you are on. Thank you, and stay tuned for our upcoming episode.